Well, hey, in this video, we are going to talk about hitting the reset button in your marriage after the kids are gone. I have JD and Lisa in the studio today. So glad you guys are here.
Thanks for inviting us.
Okay, so why are you capable of talking about this topic? Tell us about your family situation currently.
Well, currently, our oldest daughter, we have two daughters.
Okay.
Our oldest daughter is graduated from college and is living on her own. And our youngest daughter will be a senior next year in college. And so they pretty much don't need our assistance like they used to.
And you're moving closer to that financial independence too, right? If your oldest is graduated, can take care of herself.
Hopefully.
That opens the budget up in some major ways, I imagine.
We hope so.
We hope so, right?
We
I
hope
know.
so. Yes.
Okay, so that's good. So this is what we want to do today. I just want you guys to give us your wisdom on what it's like to hit that reset button. JD, that was something you said when we talked about this earlier, and I really like that because I think a lot of couples think, in fact, the divorce rate would tell us that a lot of couples, when they get into your phase of life, really struggle in marriage because they don't have the distraction of kids anymore. And now all of a sudden you're looking at each other like, oh, who are you? We haven't really paid that much attention to our marriage over the last 20 years raising kids.
It's funny how fast your life changes the moment you have a child, and and you blink of an eye, that's all you think about in your family.
That's a great point.
But when they slowly start leaving, it's not something that happens as quickly or as cleanly or as comfortably.
That's a good point. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with just a couple of tips specifically about the marriage relationship, and then we'll finish with some tips of just how do you relate as a married couple with adult kids, because it's different, because you're not the same kind of parent to adult kids as you are when they're younger. So our first tip is it's an opportunity to restart the relationship. What does that mean?
It's back to the future.
Back to the future. What do you mean?
In Back to the Future, I mean that we go back to a dating relationship where it's just the two of us.
Right.
We're not juggling as many plates in our lives.
Right. Exactly.
Hopefully.
Yeah, because you now can go back to the time of like, oh yeah, before we had kids. Now you were younger then, but you still have a chance to go back to that time where you didn't have these other responsibilities and you could just cultivate relationship together.
Correct. And I would say that it was a lot more difficult for me to, as our girls were leaving, to figure out what that was going to look like
Right.
and how I was going to adjust to that. And so we just really had to sit down and talk about that and what is that going to look like now with our girls not going on vacations with us and
Right.
not doing those types of things with us.
Absolutely, and I know for you guys, a lot of your vacation times were spent doing sports and travel with teams, which is a totally, I mean, you can call it vacation. It's a different kind of vacation.
It's a very
But you
different
guys are getting ready
vacation.
to go on a vacation, aren't you, as a married couple with no kids?
Just
We
the two
are.
of us.
We are.
Totally
So,
different experience.
Yes. Exciting and fun and looking forward to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back to the future. We're reconnecting a relationship that maybe had taken a little bit of a back seat. Here's the next thing you guys talked about, this idea that love is a choice, which is one of our primary marriage principles that we build all of our marriage topics around. This idea that love is about making choices. And so for you guys, what does that mean for you at this stage of your life, that being married and now post-kids, reconnecting in your marriage again, what does choosing love look like for you now?
For me, it's a matter of you can look at that person and see the positive qualities,
Yes.
or you can look at that person and see the negative qualities, and they're there in everybody.
Right.
It's undeniable. So it's which one do you want to do?
Right. Which one do you want to focus on?
Which one do you want to focus on? And it's your choice.
Right.
You don't have to glaringly pick one or the other.
Right.
You don't have to take the bad one.
Right. Yeah, because I think that's what happens in a lot of marriages is all of a sudden now there's time to refocus on each other. Well, okay, you're 20 years down the road, maybe some of those traits that were somewhat attractive to you early on now have become annoying. So JD, to your point, like you can choose to focus on the things that drive you crazy about each other, because those are in clearer focus now that you have less distraction. Or you can choose to say, you know what, this is a new opportunity for us. Yep, we're different people. Maybe we're a little crankier in our older age, but we still love each other and there's still things we love to do together.
Correct. And we've talked about that too. I mean, you know, you have to overlook those flaws.
Yes.
And like you said, there are things that you fall in love with, and they're so endearing to you, and then as time goes by, they become an annoyance, and so you have to, overlook those and
Right.
not get stuck in that mode.
Right. Well, and I think that that's the last tip we're talking about here in this section is just this idea to have date nights, to kind of go back to the courting time in your relationship. Because I'm sure when you dated, there were things that were annoying about each other, but you looked past them because you were so in love.
Right. You totally look past them because
Yeah.
you're so in love, and this is someone you want to build a future with, and so you overlook those, and
Right.
then as 25 years down the road, boy, that's irritating.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so you have to ignore that and not let that get to you.
Okay, good. Okay, so now I just want to take a few minutes and transition to just some tips that you have for couples as they relate with their adult kids, because I think that's important and that could consume a lot of your conversation, just like in the active parenting years. Okay, now you may not have as much responsibility, but there's still heavier issues, I would say, with adult kids. Okay, so our first tip that you wanted to offer is that recognize the strengths of each of you as parents and what that looks like relating to adult kids. What does that mean?
Well, for us, I tend to be, I tend to want to stay really involved in my children's lives, and sometimes that isn't the best tactic. And so, Jeff reminds me that, this might be an issue that we need to stay quiet on and let them resolve and figure out themselves instead of interjecting and telling them things that they probably don't want to hear, but I really want them to hear. And so,
and knowing how to balance that.
And how to balance that.
Because that goes to our next tip. Our goal in parenting is to raise independent kids. And so now you guys are at a stage where your kids are largely independent. But it's hard because we want to still protect them. So what is it about celebrating independence yet struggling through watching them maybe make choices that you don't love?
You have to be able to let them fall down sometimes, and that's not as easy as it sounds. And I think today's society, especially when they're younger, and we tend to lean that way where we maybe not quite helicopter, but pretty darn close to helicopter type parents, and you just can't anymore. At this point, when they become adults, I try to look at it as a celebration of their adulthood, and let them enjoy their mistakes as you had to work through yours, and
that's good,
because that's how they learn. That is you. A friend of mine told me the truth isn't given to somebody; it's discovered.
Right, that's true.
And so they have to.
Which sometimes comes through the mistakes and the hard consequences for stuff.
Exactly.
That's good. Okay, so let's just finish. This tip I think is really important. That just really being committed to prayer over our kids. What would you say to that?
Oh, that to me is the biggest. When they're younger, you assume that you can do everything for them.
Yes.
So I think we forget about prayer when they're young because you just see it as your actions when it really should have been there. Now that you don't do everything for them, hopefully, then all of a sudden you realize your biggest weapon is prayer. And so I guess that's a blessing that we're reminded.
Kind of release it and trust
to release
that
it and go to prayer and pray for them that they meet the right people in their lives and that they make the right choices.
And then be patient in your prayer.
Right.
Which, is...
It's very hard.
It is hard sometimes because when they are picking and choosing what they're going to do, and the consequences are much bigger, and you want to jump in and go, stop, but you have to really just trust that God loves them more than I do.
That's right.
And I'm going to be patient in my prayers.
That's great. Well, you guys, thank you for sharing your tips today and just some of your experience. Use those questions. You guys talk about this with someone in your life, a mentor, small group, trusted friend, and really grow at this time in your life of resetting the reset button in your marriage once the kids are gone. We'll see you in the next video.